In the golden glow of a Lagos sunset, Rose looks like any other student. But her worn-out bag isn't just carrying accounting books anymore. It's carrying a secret that could change her life or cost her everything. For years, she played by the rules, working the library shifts, studying late, and staying silent about her empty stomach. Her mother taught her to be grateful for nothing, but tonight, the math finally stopped adding up. Rose just made a choice she can never take back. Is she a victim of the system, or the one about to break it? As she turned the corner near the old church, she stopped. A young man sat against the crumbling wall, his clothes tattered and stained, his hair unkempt and wild. But it was his eyes that held her attention. They weren't the empty, desperate eyes she had seen on other beggars. They were distant, thoughtful, as if he were calculating something far beyond the street he sat on. He didn't stretch out his hand. He didn't call for help. He just sat there, staring at the ground with a quiet intensity that made Rose's heart ache. She reached into her bag and pulled out the small envelope containing her week's wages. Without hesitation, she took out several bills and knelt beside him, placing the money gently on the ground near his hand. The young man looked up slowly, his eyes widening in surprise. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then his lips curved into the smallest of smiles. Hello, friends. Welcome to Black Bite Stories. Before we begin today's story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from our global family. Thank you, he said, his voice soft but clear, educated even. Rose smiled warmly. Please use it to buy something to eat. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in days. He nodded, his fingers closing around the money as if it were made of glass. I'm John, he said quietly. Rose, she replied, standing up and brushing dust from her skirt. I hope things get better for you, John. She walked away, unaware that the man she had just helped was watching her with an expression that went far beyond gratitude. It was recognition, the kind of recognition that comes when you finally find something you've been searching for your entire life. Over the following weeks, Rose found herself drawn back to that same corner. Each time she passed by, she would stop and talk with John. She brought him food when she could afford it, shared her lunch with him on days when she couldn't. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in an orphanage, about the struggles of surviving on the streets after aging out of the system. She told him about her dreams of becoming an accountant, about her mother who cleaned houses to pay for her education, about the weight of being the only hope her family had. What Rose didn't know was that every word she spoke, every kindness she showed, was being carefully observed. John wasn't homeless. He was Jonathan Oladil, heir to Oladil Industries, one of the largest conglomerates in West Africa. For months he had been living on the streets, disguised as a beggar, searching for something his wealth could never buy. Authenticity, real human connection, someone who would see him as a person, not a bank account. He had grown tired of the women who threw themselves at him, their eyes gleaming with dollar signs. Tired of the fake smiles and calculated conversations. His parents had been pressuring him to marry, to settle down and produce an heir. But Jonathan had refused. He wanted what his parents had, a love built on genuine affection, not financial transaction. So he had made a radical decision. He would strip away everything that made him Jonathan Oladil, billionaire, and find out if anyone would care about Jonathan the person. For 3 months he had lived on those streets. He had been ignored, spat on, kicked aside. He had learned what it meant to be invisible. And then Rose had appeared, with her warm smile and her impossibly kind heart. She had seen him when the rest of the world looked away. One evening, as Rose sat beside him sharing a plate of rice and stew, Jonathan made a decision. Rose, he said carefully, there's something I need to tell you. She looked at him with those honest eyes, waiting. Before he could speak, a group of young men rounded the corner. Jonathan recognized them immediately. Street thugs who controlled this territory. His heart sank. Hey, beggar man, the leader called out, swaggering forward. This is our corner. You've been warned before. Jonathan stood slowly, positioning himself between Rose and the approaching men. I'm leaving. There's no need for trouble. The leader laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the buildings. Too late for that. What happened next occurred in seconds. The first punch came fast, catching Jonathan in the ribs. He could have defended himself. He had trained in martial arts since childhood, but he couldn't reveal his true identity, not yet. So he took the beating, protecting Rose with his body as the men kicked and punched him. Rose screamed, trying to pull them away, but they pushed her aside. Finally they left, laughing as they disappeared into the growing darkness. Rose knelt beside Jonathan, tears streaming down her face. Blood trickled from his split lip, and bruises were already forming on his jaw. "We need to get you to a hospital," she said urgently. Jonathan shook his head weakly. "I can't afford it." Rose's jaw set with determination. "I don't care, come on." She half-carried, half-dragged him to the nearest clinic. The nurse on duty took one look at him and started to turn them away. "We don't treat street people here without payment up front." Rose slammed her envelope of wages on the counter. "This is all I have. Please just help him." The nurse looked at the money, then at Rose's desperate face. She sighed and nodded. As the nurse cleaned and stitched Jonathan's wounds, Rose sat beside him, holding his hand. He looked at her through his swelling eye and felt something crack open inside his chest. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. Rose squeezed his hand. "Because everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, John. Everyone deserves kindness." In that moment, Jonathan Oladell knew with absolute certainty that he had found her. The woman he would marry. The woman who had seen past his disguise, past his circumstances, and recognized his humanity. But he also knew the truth would have to come out soon, and he wasn't sure how she would react. 3 days later, Rose received a call from an unknown number. "Miss Rose, this is James, Mr. Jonathan Oladell's personal assistant. He would like to meet with you at the Oladell Industries headquarters tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Rose frowned at her phone. "I think you have the wrong number. I don't know anyone named Jonathan Oladell." There was a pause. "The young man you know as John would like to see you. Please, it's very important." Rose's heart began to race. The next morning she stood before the towering glass building that housed Oladell Industries, her stomach churning with confusion and anxiety. A smartly dressed man met her in the lobby and escorted her to a private elevator that opened directly into a penthouse office. The door slid open, and Rose stepped into a room that seemed to be made entirely of windows and light. And there, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, was John. Except he wasn't John anymore. He wore an impeccably tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Rose's entire education. His hair was freshly cut, his face clean-shaven except for a neatly trimmed beard. He looked like he had stepped out of a magazine cover. Rose felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. "John," she whispered. He turned, and despite the expensive clothes and the luxurious surroundings, his smile was the same one she had come to know. "My full name is Jonathan Oladell," he said quietly. "I'm the CEO of Oladell Industries." Rose stared at him, her mind refusing to process the information. "But you were on the streets, you had nothing." Jonathan walked toward her slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. "I had everything, Rose. That was the problem. I needed to know if anyone could love me for who I am, not what I have. So I gave up my identity and lived as John the Beggar. And then I met you." Tears began to stream down Rose's face. "You lied to me." Jonathan shook his head firmly. "I never lied. Everything I told you about feeling lost, about struggling, about searching for something real, all of that was true. The only thing I didn't tell you was my last name." Rose sank into a nearby chair, her legs unable to support her. "Why are you telling me this now?" Jonathan knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Because I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Rose. You showed me kindness when I had nothing. You defended me, cared for me, sacrificed for me. You saw me as a human being when the rest of the world looked through me. That's the rarest thing I've ever experienced." Rose looked into his eyes and saw the same man she had shared meals with on the street corner, the same man who had listened to her dreams and encouraged her ambitions. The expensive suit didn't change who he was underneath. "I need time to process this," she said finally. Jonathan nodded. Take all the time you need, but know this, I fell in love with you, Rose, the real you, and I hope you can see past all of this. He gestured at the office, and love the real me too. Rose went home in a daze. Her mother listened to the whole story with wide eyes, then threw her hands up in joy. My daughter, do you know what this means? We'll never struggle again. But Rose barely heard her. She was thinking about the man who had been willing to give up everything, just to find someone who would see his soul. 2 days later, Rose called the number Jonathan had given her. I want to see you again, she said. They met at a small park, away from the towers of glass and steel. Jonathan arrived in jeans and a simple shirt, looking more like the John she had first met. They walked in silence for a while before Rose spoke. I've been thinking about what you said, about needing to know if someone could love you for who you are. She stopped walking and turned to face him. The truth is, I already do. I fell in love with John the Beggar because of his kindness, his dignity, his gentle spirit. Learning that you're also Jonathan the Billionaire doesn't change any of that. It just means the man I love has the power to help even more people. Jonathan's face broke into a smile that could have powered the city. Does this mean you'll give me a chance? Rose smiled back. It means I'm willing to see where this goes. But no more secrets, Jonathan. If we're going to do this, we do it with complete honesty. He took her hands gently, as if afraid that even the smallest sudden movement might fracture the fragile truth forming between them. His palms were warm, steady, grounding her. Complete honesty, Jonathan said quietly. From this moment on, I promise. Rose searched his face for hesitation, for even the faintest shadow of deception, but found none. Only sincerity, raw and unguarded. She nodded, not because she fully understood everything he was offering, but because she trusted the man standing before her. Over the following months, their relationship deepened in ways neither of them had anticipated. Jonathan never rushed her, or tried to dazzle her with wealth. There were no extravagant displays meant to overwhelm or distract. Instead, he let Rose discover his world slowly, allowing trust to grow naturally. He introduced her to his parents during a quiet Sunday afternoon at their family home, not at some grand estate meant to impress. Rose arrived nervous, her fingers trembling slightly as she smoothed her modest dress. But the moment Jonathan's mother embraced her, her fear began to dissolve. She was welcomed warmly, not as a curiosity or a charity case, but as someone who truly mattered. Jonathan's mother listened intently as Rose spoke about her studies, her ambitions, and her love for accounting, admiring her discipline and determination. She saw not a girl defined by struggle, but a woman shaped by resilience. Later, she told Jonathan with unmistakable pride that Rose reminded her of herself when she was young, driven, intelligent, and unafraid of hard work. Jonathan made sure Rose could continue her education, but he never tried to pay her way outright. He understood that her independence was not stubborn pride, but a deeply rooted sense of dignity. Instead of offering shortcuts, he created pathways. He connected her with respected mentors in the accounting field, who challenged her thinking and refined her skills. He arranged an internship for her at Oladell Industries, making it clear to everyone involved that Rose was not to be treated as the CEO's partner, but as a capable student who had earned her place. Rose worked long hours, stayed up late studying, and proved her worth through consistency and effort. Jonathan supported her quietly, celebrating her achievements without overshadowing them. When she succeeded, the success was hers alone. When she struggled, he stood beside her, offering encouragement rather than solutions. Their bond grew stronger not through gifts or promises, but through shared respect and understanding. 6 months later, Jonathan asked Rose to take a walk with him. He didn't explain where they were going, only that it was important. When they stopped, recognition hit her instantly. It was the same street corner where everything had begun. The cracked pavement, the worn shop signs, the ordinary place where she had once knelt to help a man she believed had nothing. But now, something felt different. A small crowd had gathered, made up of familiar faces. Jonathan's parents stood nearby, smiling knowingly. Her mother was there too, her eyes shining with emotion. Friends, colleagues, and a few strangers waited quietly, as though holding their breath. Confusion crossed Rose's face as she looked around, but before she could speak, Jonathan took her hand and guided her forward. Slowly, deliberately, he knelt down on the very spot where he had once sat as a beggar, invisible to the world. A hush fell over the crowd as Jonathan looked up at her, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Rose," he said, his voice steady but heavy with feeling, "on this corner you taught me that wealth isn't measured in money, power, or status, but in the richness of the human heart. You gave me kindness when you believed I had nothing to offer. You saw me when the world had chosen not to." He paused, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. "You gave me something priceless that day. Now I want to give you everything I am, everything I have, and everything I'll ever be. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Rose's vision as she looked down at the man kneeling before her, her mind filled with memories, the first conversation, the shared laughter, the quiet moments of trust and growth. She thought of her mother's hopes that she would never struggle again, but she knew this moment wasn't about security or comfort. It was about recognition, about love that had grown from truth rather than illusion. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling as she pulled him to his feet. "Yes, Jonathan, I'll marry you. I'll marry." The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Jonathan's parents embraced Rose as though she were already their daughter, while her mother wept openly, overwhelmed with joy. In the middle of the celebration, Jonathan held Rose close and whispered softly, "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible." Their wedding became a national sensation, covered by every major. They returned to the same street corner, where a newly built center now stood. Jonathan had arranged for a foundation to be established there, a place offering job training, education, and support for homeless individuals who had been overlooked by society. A plaque on the wall read, "Founded in honor of a chance meeting that changed 2 lives forever." Rose stood quietly before the building, her hand in Jonathan's, and felt a deep sense of peace. She had helped a homeless beggar without knowing he was a billionaire, but what truly mattered was that she had recognized his humanity. That recognition had transformed them both. Jonathan squeezed her hand and smiled. "Ready to change the world together, Mrs. Oladell?" Rose looked up at her husband, her smile filled with certainty and hope. "Ready as I'll ever be, Mr. Oladell." And together, they walked forward into their future, proving that love found in the most unexpected places can be the strongest love of all.